There are realistic times and there are idealistic times. What is realistic might be the good enough. What is idealistic is maybe what we're aiming for. Podcast Growth Nation, welcome back to another episode of Podcast Growth University, where we talk all things podcasting all the time. I hope you enjoyed the latest episode number 59, 2 speaking tips you can start practicing now. #pickle. If you didn't listen to that episode, you have no idea what I'm talking about. If you did listen, maybe you got a little giggle out of it. Today, finally, for episode number 60, we are going to do what I have been pushing off for several weeks now, maybe a month, I don't know. Is good enough ever enough? You'll hear people say, well, good enough, or looks good from my house, or yeah, good enough, really. That's what you'll hear. You'll hear people saying good enough. And I used to think good enough was a bad term. It was a lazy term. It was an incomplete term. It wasn't good. And after coaching hundreds of people at this point and being on thousands of calls, I really believe that good enough is enough for many of us. And this is why. I had a client one time who was very, very, very good at what they did, but they did not understand the technical side of podcasting. They didn't understand technology really at all. They didn't understand how it all worked. And when I was advising them, I told them to get a $70 microphone. I told them not to worry about getting a new camera. I told them not to worry about setting up a studio. I told them to just get started, because good enough was enough for them in the beginning. Good enough is contextual. It depends on your level of understanding. Some clients start off with a full studio and a $2,000 camera. Other people start off with a $70 microphone and no camera at all. It depends on the level of confidence, depends on the level of competence. It really depends on the level of aspiration. So what are we trying to accomplish here and how quickly? I believe good enough is directly connected to the level of results you are expecting. So if you come to me and say, hey, I'm going to do one episode a week forever, is that good enough? Sure. Yeah, I mean, you can be very, very successful doing one episode a week forever. Is that good enough for the level of impact I want to have or the level of mastery I want to practice? Maybe not. Doesn't mean it's not for you. I have a pair of clients who actually only do 2 episodes a month. And they're really focused right now on making revenue in their business. And that's really what our coaching calls are about. Our coaching calls are way more business than podcasting. We don't really even talk about podcasting. But I told them right now, 2 episodes a month is good enough. I don't want you to invest more money in the podcast right now when you already have coaching services that you're not leveraging, and we could probably do a better job on social media. Let's really focus on that. You doing 2 episodes a month is good enough for right now. I think you doing 4 episodes a month is going to cost you more money, and it's probably not worth it right now because we want to make sure that the business is safe first. I had a call today with a potential client. It was considered a podcast breakthrough session, but it's somebody who was referred to me who wanted to feel us out and see what we charge and all that stuff. And at one point he said, I have a question. I work out of my garage, as you can see. He was in his garage, and it was a nice garage. And he said, this is who I am. Do I have to worry about setting up a different backdrop and buying a new camera and all that stuff? He said, I don't really want to do that. I would rather get going. I'd rather build momentum. And I said, I 100% agree. My thought process is this. There are realistic times and there are idealistic times. What is realistic might be the good enough. What is idealistic is maybe what we're aiming for. So would I like you to have a custom studio eventually? Sure. If the budget would allow that, we have clients that do that, right? But a lot of our clients, they're just working on realistically doing an episode a week, realistically posting on social media 3 to 5 times a week. The ideal is, yes, you would be doing an episode a week. You'd be doing a social media post every day. You'd be doing 3 to 5 stories on various social media platforms every day. You'd be going on at least 3 to 5 other shows a week. You would have a conversation with a potential prospect every single day. You would message a potential guest every single day. You'd post in your Facebook group every single day. You'd have a coaching call every single day. That's ideal, sure. Yeah. But oftentimes ideal is not realistic. So finding the balance, I guess, between those two, I don't know if I like the word balance that much, but finding the sweet spot between those two is really what I'm trying to do with clients, and I would suggest that for you as well. Good enough is you doing episodes in the beginning. Maybe you don't have a camera yet. Cool. Use your camera that your laptop provides. They're getting better and better anyway. Mine is terrible. That's why I have an external camera. But my laptop is older, so it works really well. It's very fast. Everything's great, but the camera is not great. So that was good enough in the very beginning. And then we ended up saying, oh, we're going to get external webcams. And then we got external webcams. And that was good enough for a season. And then we ended up upgrading cameras. Good enough is enough as long as you're focusing on improving what good enough means next time. That's really what I would say. And the reason, two thoughts. One, the reason I kept pushing this episode back is because I believe it's very closely connected to, I don't remember, Keep It Simple and Small. We did that episode for episode number 53, so that was at this point almost 2 months ago. But it just wasn't pinging me. It wasn't the episode that I wanted to do. Things kept coming up that I thought would be more valuable. But now I've seen a lot of people who they either don't continue podcasting because they don't think good enough is enough in that season, or they think good enough is enough forever and they never raise their standards. I have someone in mind right now who, this person, I was talking to this person and kind of coaching, not for a long time. I did a couple consulting calls with them a few years ago. And they're still podcasting, but not really. They're doing an episode, then taking 3 weeks off, and then taking a month off, then doing an episode, then another episode, then another episode, then taking a huge break. And they never raised the good enough. And unfortunately, they will never be successful when it comes to podcasting. That might sound harsh. That might sound negative. I don't mean it to be negative or harsh. Based on what I've seen, they just can't be. You cannot be consistent. Or you cannot be successful if you cannot be consistent. Unless something lucky happens, and it's just the more consistent you are, the luckier you get. So I can't picture that happening. But they never raised what good enough meant to them. They are just doing it when they feel like it. Not necessarily a recipe for success. And that's actually an episode we're going to do in the future. So I would probably say that would be the theme and the wrap up of this episode is good enough is enough as long as you plan on improving what good enough means. Because that's kind of how everything starts. I'm sure McDonald's did, and again, I use McDonald's just because most people have heard of it, not because it's a quality product, but McDonald's is far more quality today than it was in the past. Good enough was probably, we're going to have one store and we're going to serve 3 different kinds of hamburgers, and that's going to be it. And then eventually good enough was, okay, we're going to do the next level of that. But we're always in the gap between what we're capable of and what we want to be capable of. And I think a podcast or anything, really a business, a YouTube channel, whatever it is part of the same thing. It goes through the same thing. So my question for you would be, what have you determined is good enough that you haven't revisited in a while? Now maybe you have a little bit of extra money, so you could upgrade your mic, and now that mic is good enough. You don't need a $300 microphone like I have. You can get a $50 microphone. That might be good enough for this season, right? But maybe when you're 500 episodes in, you want to upgrade that. Awesome. So that's my question to you is, where have you gotten stuck on good enough and not revisited it and tried to improve that bucket, whatever that means? And has your good enough evolved in everything? In your intros, in your pronunciation of the names of your guests, in your social media content, has good enough improved? I really, now more than ever, understand a lot of people are saying good enough and then they're just walking away from it, not revisiting it and making it better. So imagine your plumber comes in, the plumber's working in your basement, and they put the pipes up and they look at it and say, yeah, good enough. And they say that for the rest of their career. Versus a plumber who comes in and does it one time and says, yeah, that's good enough. Knowing it's gonna be okay. They're not saying good enough like I'm lazy and I don't want to do any better. But good enough where this is gonna work. Then they learn some more stuff on some other jobs and they get practice and they have different experiences, different lessons, different mentors. The next time, good enough is different. It might be a higher quality good enough, where they might do something a little bit different than they did before. That is progress. 100%. That is progress. For me now, having my window open a little bit is good enough. I want to have the best audio quality humanly possible, for sure, I do. But sometimes there's a nice breeze outside. It's about to be fall in New Hampshire, and I want to have the window open. Now, if there's fire trucks or dogs barking or whatever it is, then I won't do it. But sometimes for me, that is good enough. So that's another layer of this is your understanding of the downside of what you're doing or the upside of what you're doing is probably going to be connected to what good enough means. I would not want to get on an airplane where every time they went through and they looked at the screws and the wheels and everything, they said, it's good enough. I don't know if I would like to get on a plane because the fear around that, the downsides, the potential disastrous results are much higher. So obviously good enough is contextual to the possibility, I'll use that word, the possibility of mayhem if you're not on top of it. So a simple episode today, not going to be super long, but that is something I'm thinking about right now. When we got our first studio, I was obsessed with improving it. Every time I would go in, I'd say, we could use some lights over there. We need some more sound deadening. What if I got giant curtains and we hung them up? We need a bigger TV that's closer to the camera so it looks like we're looking at the camera. We're going to get a water bubbler so we don't have to leave the studio. We're going to get a fridge in here too. Awesome. We need a bigger desk. Well, we need another desk for when Alan is in there. Good enough was getting the studio in the beginning and then putting up a wall. And then there was a TV that went on that wall. And then it was getting another TV that we could look at. And then it was getting lights, and it was getting different lights, then a new camera. So I believe good enough is an evolution. That is what I would say. Podcast Growth Nation, If you are listening to this and you have been listening to this and you have had fear around booking a podcast breakthrough session, I had somebody do it a couple weeks ago and they said, I've listened to every single episode and I just got the courage to do it today. Please be courageous. I promise I do not bite. I promise I am the same behind the scenes as I am in front of you. I'm probably even goofier behind the scenes. So you are safe. I am not going to look down on you if you ask what you think are dumb questions. Trust me, I didn't know any of this in the beginning. I do not expect you to know everything either. So the link will be in the show notes. As always, I would love to chat with you. Worst case scenario, I get to meet you, right? Even if it's not super valuable to either of us, which I do not ever expect it to be, I will get to meet you, and the more you know your audience, the better the show is going to be. You've heard me say that before, so I would love to be on the other side of that for you if it is aligned. Link will be in the show notes as always. Next week for episode number 61, we are going to do the most important thing I have learned about inspiration as a podcaster. Not what you think. I'm not going to talk about what inspires me or what I do to get inspiration. I'm going to talk about a lot of things people don't talk about when it comes to chasing dreams, when it comes to doing what you love. I want it to be a real, authentic, vulnerable conversation. So that will be my goal for episode number 61. As always, I appreciate you all very much. I hope you are crushing the podcast game. I hope you are getting downloads and listens and shares and clients and likes and comments and social media and all that stuff. I hope it's going really, really well. If not, I am always just a message away. Questions, comments, concerns, you can message me on Instagram. You can shoot me an email, whatever you need. I am here. I'm just a message away. Keep on crushing it. Keep on podcasting, and I will talk to you all next week.